Magic Treehouse number 3, Mummies in the Morning. Chapter 7, The Scroll. Jack put the scepter and his notebook and pencil into his pack. He and Annie followed the Ghost Queen, deeper into the pyramid, until they came to some stairs. "The stairs," said Jack and Annie. The Ghost Queen floated up the stairs. Jack and Annie followed. The Ghost Queen floated right through a wooden door. Jack and Annie pushed on the door. It opened slowly. They stepped onto a cold, drafty room. The Ghost Queen was nowhere in sight. A dim torchlight lit the huge room. It had a very high ceiling. On one side was a pile of tables, chairs, and musical instruments. On the other side of the room was a small wooden boat. "The boat?" Jack yelled. "What's it doing inside Queen Tippy's pyramid?" asked Annie. "Maybe it's supposed to carry her to the next life," said Jack. He and Annie went over to the boat. They looked inside it. The boat was filled with many things: gold plates, painted cups, jeweled goblets, woven baskets, jewelry, and blue stones, small wooden statues. "Look," said Jack. He reached into the boat and lifted out a clay jug. "The jug," said Annie. Jack looked inside the jug. "Something's in here," he said. "What is it?" asked Annie. Jack felt down inside the jug. "It feels like a big napkin," he said. "The folded cloth," said Annie. Jack reached into the jug and pulled out the folded cloth. It was wrapped around an ancient-looking scroll. Jack slowly unrolled the scroll. It was covered with wonderful hieroglyphs. "The Book of the Dead," whispered Annie. "We found it. We found her book." "Oh, man!" Jack traced his finger over the scroll. It felt like very old paper. "Queen Tippy," called Annie. "We have it. We found your Book of the Dead." Silence. "Queen Tippy?" Then another door on the other side of the chamber creaked open. "Hi there," said Annie. "Maybe she's in there." "Or in there," said Annie. "Maybe she's in there." Jack's heart was pounding. Cold air was coming through the open doorway. "Come on," said Annie. "Wait." "No," said Annie. She's waiting. She's waited 1,000 years for her book. Don't make her wait any more." Jack put the ancient scroll into his backpack. Then he and Annie slowly started to cross the drafty room. They came to the open door. Annie went through first. "Hurry, Jack," she said. Jack stepped into the other room. It was nearly bare except for a long gold box. The box was open. The cover was on the floor. "Queen Tippy?" called Annie. Silence. "We found it," said Annie. "Your Book of the Dead." There was still no sign of the Ghost Queen. The gold box glowed. Jack could barely breathe. "Let's leave the scroll on the floor and go," he said. "No, I think we should leave it in there," said Annie. She pointed to the gold box. "No," said Jack. "Don't be afraid," said Annie. "Come on." Annie and took Jack by the arm. They walked together across the room to the glowing gold box. They stopped in front of the box and they peered inside. Chapter 8, The Mummy. A real mummy. Bandages were still wrapped around the bald skull, but some of the bandages had come off the face. It was Tippy, Queen of the Nile. Her broken teeth were showing, her little wrinkled ears, her squashed nose, her withered flesh, her hollow eye sockets, plus the rotting bandages on her body were coming off. You could see bones. "How gross," called Annie. "Let's go." "No," said Jack. "It's interesting." "Forget it," said Annie. She started out of the room. "Wait, Annie." "Come on, Jack, hurry," cried Annie, and she was standing by the door. Jack pulled out the Egypt book and flipped to the picture of the mummy, and he read aloud. "An ancient Egyptians tried to protect the body so it would last forever. First it was dried out with salt." "Ugh, stop," said Annie. "Listen," said Jack. He kept reading. "Next it was covered with oil, then it was wrapped tightly in bandages. And the brain was removed by—" "Oh, yuck!" "Stop," cried Annie. "Goodbye." She dashed out the door. "Annie," called Jack. "We have to give her the Book of the Dead." But Annie was gone. Jack reached into his pack. He pulled out the scroll and the scepter. He put them next to the mummy's skull. Was it just his imagination, or did a deep sigh seem to shudder throughout the room? Did the mummy's face grow calmer? Jack held his breath as he backed away, out of the mummy room, out of the boat room, down the stairs. At the bottom of the stairs, he heaved his own sigh, a sigh of relief. He looked down the hallway. It was empty. "Hey, where are you?" he said. No answer. Where in the world was Annie? Jack started down the hallway. "Annie!" he called. Had she run after the pyramid? Was she already outside? "Annie! Help, Jack!" came a cry. The voice sounded far away. It was Annie. Where was she? "Help, Jack! Annie!" Jack started to run along the shadowy hallway. "Help, Jack!" Her cry seemed fainter. Jack stopped. He was running away from her voice. "Annie!" he called. He went back toward the burial chambers. "Jack!" There. Her voice was louder. "Jack!" Even louder. Jack climbed the stairs. He went back into the boat room. He looked around the room, at the furniture, the musical instruments, the boat. Then he saw it. Another door. Right next to the door he had just come through. The other door was open. Jack dashed through it and found himself at the top of some stairs. They were just like the stairs in the other hallway. He went down into the hallway, and it was lit by torches on the wall. It was just like the other hallway. "Annie!" he called. "Jack! Annie! Jack!" She was running through the hallway toward him. She crashed into him. "I was lost!" she cried. "I think this is one of those false passages built to fool the tomb robbers," said Jack. "A false passage?" said Annie, panting. "Yeah, it looks just like the right hallway," said Jack. "We have to go back into the boat room and out the right door." Just then they heard a creaking noise. Jack and Annie turned around and they looked up the stairs. Then they watched in horror as the door slowly creaked shut. A deep sound rumbled in the distance, and all the torches went out. Oh, man. Chapter 9. Follow the leader. It was pitch dark. "What happened?" asked Annie. "I don't know. Something weird," said Jack. "We have to get out of here fast. Push against the door." "Good idea," said Annie in a small voice. They felt their way through the darkness to the top of the stairs. "Don't worry. Everything's going to be okay," said Jack. He was trying to stay calm. "Of course," said Annie. They leaned against the wooden door and pushed. It wouldn't budge. They pushed harder. No use. Jack took a deep breath. It was getting harder to breathe and harder to stay calm. "But what can we do?" asked Annie. Just rest a moment," said Jack, panting. His heart was pounding as he tried to see through the darkness. "Maybe we should start down the hall," he said. "Maybe we'll eventually come to an exit." He wasn't sure about that, but they had no choice. "Come on," he said. "Feel the wall." Jack felt the stone wall as he climbed slowly down the stairs. Annie followed. Jack started down the dark hallway. It was impossible to see anything. But he kept going, taking one step at a time, moving his hands along the wall. He went around a corner. He went around another corner. He came to some stairs. He went up. There was a door. He pushed against it. Annie pushed too. This door wouldn't budge either. Was this the same door they had stared at? It was no use. They had started at? It was no use. They were trapped. Annie took his hand in the dark. She squeezed it. They stood together at the top of the stairs, listening to the silence. "Meow." "Oh, man," Jack whispered. "He's back," said Annie. "Meow." "Follow him," cried Jack. "He's going away from us." They started down the dark hallway, following the cat's meow. Hands against the wall, Jack and Annie stumbled through the darkness. Meow. They followed the sound all the way through the winding hallway, down, 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 around one corner, then another, and finally they saw a light at the end of the tunnel. They rushed forward, out into the bright sunlight. Yay! Annie laughed. But Jack was thinking. Annie, he said, how did we get out of the false passage? The cat, said Annie. But how could the cat do it? Asked Jack. Magic, said Annie. Jack frowned. But look, said Annie. She pointed. The cat was bounding away over the sand. Thank you, called Annie. Thanks, Jack shouted at the cat. His black tail waved. Then he disappeared into a shimmering waves of heat. Jack looked toward the palm trees. At the top of one sat the treehouse, just like a bird's nest. Time to go home, Jack said. He and Annie set off for the palm trees. It was a long, hot walk back. At last, Annie grabbed onto the rope ladder, then Jack. Once they were inside the treehouse, Jack reached for the book about Pennsylvania. Just then he heard a rumbling sound, the same sound they had heard in the pyramid. Look, Annie said, pointing out the window. Jack looked. A boat was beside the pyramid. It was gliding over the sand like a boat sailing over the sea. Then it faded away into the distance. Was that just a mirage? Or was the ghost queen finally on her way to the next life? Home, Jack, whispered Annie. Jack opened the Pennsylvania book. He pointed to the picture of Fog Creek. I wish we could go home, he said. And the wind began to blow, the leaves began to shake, the wind blew harder and whistled harder, and the treehouse started to spin. It spun faster and faster. Then everything was still. Absolutely silent.